Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today we're gonna be doing a July 2024 ban list prediction video. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. So let's go ahead and see what my predictions are for this next ban list. So we have a lot of cards up on the screen and we're gonna go ahead and discuss what I think is gonna happen on the next ban list. Hopefully we get it soon because we have a lot of tournaments on the horizon and we're going to go ahead and talk about it. So first off, we have Albion. Albion the Sanctifier Dragon is a part of the Gimmick Puppet Lock, and I really feel like this card is just absolutely broken and just not fair. So I feel like in order to make more fair game states inside of Brandon, that you really need to take this card to banned, because this card is just completely not fair. And by banning the Gimmick Puppet, it doesn't stop the Albion Lock, because there's a lot of other targets. And if you guys want to reference cards like Needle Fiber or even Anaconda, you don't need to ban the cards around the problem card, you just need to ban the problem card, which Sanctifier actually is. Now next we have Maxi. So you guys are probably thinking I'm actually going to put this card as like a limited or unlimited or something like that. No, this card needs to stay banned in the TCG. Absolutely. We're getting the new jellyfish card that's going to let us like draw a bunch of cards. I feel like this card needs to stay at no change, which means it stays at its current status, which is ban. Maxi absolutely needs to stay banned. So for the next card, we have Beatrice. Beatrice, Lady of Eternal, is a card that I feel like Fiendsmith is going to completely take to a whole new level by being able to send a bunch of different cards to the graveyard, especially with Fiendsmith coming out with full power, is we're also getting the Link to Fiend monster that's based around Underworld Goddess. I think it's called Moon Goddess of the Closed Sky, which is just a really powerful broken card that means that you can bridge so many different decks into Fiendsmith. But with it being Konami, I don't think that they're actually going to ban this card. I think this card is actually going to stay no change. However, in my personal opinion, eventually this card will get banned because of Fiendsmith. But for this particular list, for July 2024, I do not think they're going to ban Beatrice. I think it is too early for Fiendsmith, but I do think that this card is on the radar, that in the next couple of lists, maybe the next list, it probably will get banned. So for the next card, we have Armageddon Knight. Armageddon Knight is a card that is slowly moved off the ban list, and I feel like it's kind of gotten power crept a little bit because of Isolde being banned. So I feel like this card could probably go back to 3 now. I don't feel like it's a problem anymore. I feel like it's a really good card, but again, I don't feel like it's really that broken. And so I feel like your copies of Armageddon Knight could definitely go back to 3. So the next one is Meow Meow Mew for Prank Kids. I feel like Prank Kids have gotten power crept, and so I feel like this card being banned is a little bit like it's overstayed its welcome in the ban zone. So I feel like this card could actually go back to limited. I don't feel like it could go much more than limited because Prank Kids are just really good with this card at like 3. But I feel like putting this card to like 1 gives Prank Kids a way to actually play without having to put 2 monsters out on the field. So this card is just really good to be able to play, and I feel like putting Meow Meow Mew back to 1 gives Prank Kids actually a chance, because ever since they banned Meow Meow Mew, Prank Kids have done absolutely nothing. And especially with Colossus back, it could be some really interesting plays in that deck. So for the next one, we have Sangan Summoning for Tenpai Dragon, and this card is a little bit weird because I feel like this card is, like, I feel like Tenpai is getting new support, and so I feel like it's kind of weird to be able to hit this card, but I also feel like this card makes Tenpai just completely not fair, because it's almost like a Miscellaneousaurus, but at 3, and in a tier 1 deck, and it's searchable by terraforming, and it's Eroda. Like, it's just too much for this deck, and I feel like the only correct way to hit Tenpai is by hitting Sangan Summoning, which was also done in the OCG, and in my personal opinion, I feel like you actually need to take this card to limited. Now, is it gonna go to limited? I'm not really sure. They might give Tenpai a little bit of like a slap on the wrist because it is still a newer deck, and with Fiendsmith on the horizon, this card could probably just go to 2. I feel like it could probably just go to 2 on the next list. I feel as though it should probably go to 1, because just like Miscellaneousaurus, it's absolutely broken, and it's in a tier 1 deck that has been topping consistently since it came out. So I feel like the best place to be able to put Sangan Summoning is actually at the limited status, because the deck is still consistent. Like, it still has 1 card combos, it can still go off in some insane plays, but I feel like by putting this card at 1, it just makes the deck a little more inconsistent to be able to compete against other decks. So for the next one, we have Kirin. Kirin, I feel like, is a really good card, but I do feel like Kirin probably goes to 3 on the next list. It's been going to 3 on a bunch of other lists, which is why I feel like this card is totally fine to go back to 3, because it's just a bounce, and at 1, it's done absolutely nothing. And I feel like this card is totally fine to come back to 3. It is a bounce, but I think it's kind of one of those cards that's fine to go back to 3. So for the next card, we do have Heavy Storm. Heavy Storm is a really interesting card because it's almost like a Harpy's Feather Duster, but it does deal with both players' back row, which can come up in some really interesting scenarios. So I feel like this card could probably go back to 1, because you do have really powerful decks like Labyrinth, Eldritch, and stuff like that running around, mostly Labyrinth. So I feel like this card could probably go back to 1 because it would just shake up the ban list. And a lot of times they do like to bring back a card that is banned when they do ban a bunch of cards to be able to spice up the game. And I feel like by bringing back Heavy Storm, it would spice the game up a little bit. Fenrir, I don't feel like... Fenrir is a little bit of a weird card, okay? So this card could get limited. This card could have no change. I don't feel like it's going to go to 2, and I don't feel like it's going to get banned. Fenrir is a card that's actually one of my favorite cards because I actually carried Kashtira all the way to Nationals, and it's a deck that I absolutely love. So I really don't want them to do anything to Fenrir, but again, with cards like Promethean Princess or Bestower of Flames for the other players, this card is really good, but it's not played as much as it used to be because of Bestower of Flames, because you instantly special summon out a copy of Fenrir, and if they're playing a fire deck, which is basically the entire meta right now, you instantly get hit by the copy Bestower of Flames if they do go first, and it's just not quite as good as it used to be. So I feel like Fenrir is actually a no change, which is kind of surprising, but I feel like Fenrir is totally fine exactly where it is. I don't feel like you need to limit Fenrir. I don't feel like you need to like semi-limit it. I don't feel like it needs to be banned. I feel like it's fine, especially since a Rise Heart is banned. I feel like it's fine exactly where it is. So for Appaloosa, Appaloosa is a little bit of a weird card because they went after generic negates on the previous list with cards like Baron and cards like Borreload Savage Dragon. So Baron's, or not Baron, but Appaloosa is a little bit weird. And so I feel like Appaloosa is one of those cards that could get banned, but it also could have no change because Appaloosa is a little bit more vulnerable than Baron de Fleur and your cards like Borreload Savage, because you can hit this card with an Infinite Impermanence or a Droplet and just immediately stop this card. As your first action, you can actually just immediately hit this card with Infinite Impermanence, and your opponent has a 0 attack point monster on the field, which is pretty insane to be able to leave your opponent wide open, and I've done that a lot in a lot of duels. So I feel like Appaloosa also only negates monsters, where Baron and Borreload Savage did in fact negate effect monster or anything at all, where Appaloosa just negates monster effects. So I feel like Appaloosa is actually, for me, a no change, which is a little bit surprising. But the more I look at Appaloosa, the more I feel like this card just doesn't move. Like, I feel like it's probably fine, but eventually, since it was reprinted in Rarity Collection 2, sometimes that does give us a sign when they reprint cards like that, especially when they give us the alternative art and the original art. I feel like sometimes it does give us a signal the cards could get banned, so I would not be surprised if they do actually ban Appaloosa, or maybe even IP, but I feel like this card for now is probably just a no change. For the next card, we do have Reasoning. Reasoning is another card that I feel like could probably, especially since the Infernoid support came out, I feel like this card could probably go back to 2. I don't feel like it needs to go back to 3 yet. It's going to be one of those slow moves that's going to move from 1 to 2 to 3, and then it's going to like not even see that much play outside of certain decks, like maybe like, I don't know, for Hire or like Infernoid, and it's one of those really good cards that I just feel like is fine at 2, maybe 3 copies, and it's one of those cards that I actually really enjoy because it can either be a complete hit or a complete miss depending on what you're playing against and depending on how you build your deck, and it really takes a key moment to be able to activate this card to get the right resolve off, unless you're playing cards like Infernoids when you only have like 1 normal summon in the entire deck, or even a deck like maybe Cubic, but that deck's not topping at all. So for the next deck, for the next card, we actually have Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity. So King Calamity, for me, I feel like this card should have been banned lists ago. Like, I really feel like this card is just not fair. Turn skipping your opponent, not cool, bro. We should just completely ban this card. I feel like Kal Yuga is another card that could get banned eventually because it's just a turn skip. It's not fair to be able to turn skip your opponent. That's not what Yu-Gi-Oh is about. It's supposed to be interactive. It's supposed to be entertaining for both players. And me watching my opponent just solitaire, not cool. I feel like that's a card that should have been banned a bunch of lists ago. It's already banned in a bunch of other formats, and I feel like banning it in the TCG is like overlooked. Like, it's been overlooked so much, and it's just not fair. And I understand that Centurion is not topping as much as it was, but the minute we do a ban list and we start like banning Snake Eyes and hitting Snake Eye and stuff like that, you're going to be surprised how much this deck, like Centurions, might be topping, especially with their new support. So go ahead and get rid of Calamity so the deck is fair. Like, I don't feel like Calamity is a card that should have been like allowed once Crimson Dragon was out, because turn skipping your opponent, not cool. Next card is Infernity Launcher. Infernity Launcher is one of those cards, again, I feel like it's overstayed its welcome on the ban list. I feel like it could probably go back to 2, because in a bunch of other formats, it's already at like 2. And so I feel like being at 2 is fine, especially with Archfiend back at 3. It hasn't done anything. And so I feel like putting it at the semi-limit section is fine. So putting this card at 2 is totally fine. For the next card, we have Glow Bloom. Glow Bloom is totally fine to come back to 1, because we don't have Needle Fiber anymore or Halk Fibrax. So I feel like putting this card back at 1 is totally fine. It's a once per duel effect. I don't see it being that broken. It is a plant support card, but again, I think it's probably fine, because this card is good, but I don't feel like it's ban good. For the next card, we have the Smorg Link Monster. With the Barrier Statue ban, this card could probably come back to 1, but if we're gonna put it at 1, why don't we just put it at 3? Like, if you're gonna play the Smorg Link, you're probably only gonna play 1 anyways, outside of Smorg or like a weird deck. So why not just go ahead and put it to 3 instead of putting it to 1? Because it's one of those cards, it's either 1 or 0 anyways. And there's a lot of cards in the game like that, like access code and stuff like that. And this almost falls into the category of like an access code monster, that it just feels like one of those cards that you're only ever going to play at 1 anyways. And you're only summoning out the Misvalue Apex Avian at this point with this card. So I feel like this card could definitely come back to 3, because it just gives Wing Beast style decks and Wind decks a little bit more of a boost. So for the next card is Wanted. Now we're starting getting into the hits for Snake Eye. So Wanted, I feel like, is a card that definitely should go to 1. It hits the consistency of Snake Eye, it hits the consistency of Diabellstar, and it makes it room for other decks to be able to step up. Whereas if you don't hit Snake Eye, you're gonna get Synogen Jin, the new card that's actually gonna come out for Millennium cards, which is just gonna boost the deck even more. We're gonna get cards like the new we're gonna get more like the Snake Eye support. We're gonna have like cards like we're gonna have the Fiendsmith cards that are gonna support the Snake Eye cards. And so I just feel like by hitting this card, it just hurts the consistency of Diabellstar, which is just really overdue, because Diabellstar is just such a powerful engine in Snake Eye. And if you include Fiendsmith into the format alongside Snake Eye that is completely unhit, we are going into another tier 0 format. Like, it is like not even a question. If we don't get a ban list, we go into a tier 0 format like no other you've ever seen. I could see 100% of representation of the top cut being entirely Fiendsmith Snake Eye. No kidding. I don't think decks can compete with that deck, and it's just not a fair deck. For the next one, I have Skill Drain. Skill Drain is a card that I feel like is probably, since they've been going after like Floodgates like crazy, I feel like Skill Drain going to 1, not completely unheard of. I feel like it's totally fine to put Skill Drain at 1, because Skill Drain is a card that's completely, in my opinion, like, it's one of the best Floodgates. Come on, like negating everything on the field, like negating every monster's effect on the field. If we're going after Rivalry, we're going after Ghost, and we're going after Summon Limit, why not go after Skill Drain too? Even Anti-Spell is limited. But Skill Drain's not. Skill Drain's like the best one. So why not go ahead and put Skill Drain at 1? Even though I love Eldritch, like, it's one of my favorite decks to play. And I know it's a stun deck, but still, I really feel like Skill Drain is one of those cards that you flip it up against the right deck, or just about any deck, and it's just the end of the game because they can't out it. For the next card, we have Bonfire. Bonfire is a card I feel like should go to 2, because it does hit the consistency of Snake Eye, plus it's a little consistent across the board. They did this in Master Duel, they did it in the OCG. I feel like doing it in the TCG is correct, because it still gives them room to be able to reprint this card, so you need a pair of this card, and you don't need 3 of it. So it doesn't really hurt the market, it just makes it so that the deck is a little bit more inconsistent, but you still need Bonfire a little bit. For the next one is Original Sinful Spool Snake Eye, or OSS. This card is really, really good. But if we're already hitting Bonfire and we're already moving Wanted to 1, don't feel like this card needs to be hit. I feel like it still makes it an engine in Volcanic. It still makes Snake Eye a little bit of an engine because this card gives you access in the Rescue Ace deck. It gives you access in a bunch of different other level 1 fire decks like Volcanic, Rescue Ace, and Snake Eye. And so I feel like putting this card to no change is totally fine for right now. Unless the deck continues to be a problem, then we might ban OSS. Because if Rescue Ace becomes really meta, and we get more decks running around like the Snake Eye deck and more variants of Snake Eye deck, like the Fiendsmith version of the deck start popping up, probably need to ban this card. So for the next one, I feel like Catapult Turtle. This card is like a no-brainer to me. I feel like this card completely goes to like ban because the OCG did it, Master Duel did it, and Master Duel doesn't even have the Tachyon support yet to be able to make the FTK. So why not just go ahead and do it like we did in the past with Phoenixian Cluster and Amaryllis? Just go ahead and ban it and be done with it. So we don't even have to deal with that FTK because that is not what this game needs right now. This game does not need another FTK. We do not need that. And he puts another card on the ban list, which is actually kind of nice to see movement. For the next one, we have Snake Eye Ash. We're not even going to talk about this. This card needs to go to 1. This card is the most important card that goes to 1 on the next ban list. I know, I hear you guys. This card got an OTS pack, Ultimate Rare. I understand. There has been other OTS cards that have gone to like the OTS pack Ultimate and then immediately got limited. It's not unheard of. There's cards that have been Ultimate Rare. There's cards that have been rarity bumped that immediately get limited. It's not unheard of. I feel like you cannot put this card at 2. You cannot leave this card at 3. This card is so powerful. It's a 1-card starter. It is insane. It is not fair. You can get to popular this way. If you hit it with an Ash Blossom, it doesn't stop them. It's so broken. This card is not fair and it needs to go to 1. Because if you don't put this card to 1 and you put it to like, say 2, if you put your Snake Eye Ash at 2, then you run into another issue. If you put Snake Eye Ash at 2, then you run into the issue that you can actually search this card with another card called Jack in the Hand, which will actually let your opponent have a level 1 monster, and we just grab Snake Eye Ash. So I don't feel like this card is fair to be able to put this card at 2. You have got to put this card at 1. There's no question about it. This card is single-handedly the most important card to put at 1 on the next list. For the next one, we're going to do all of these at once, which is going to be all 4 of the Dragon Rulers, which I think consistently these cards have been slowly moving off the list on every single format. So I personally feel like to shake up the format and to bring back veteran players back into the game, these cards actually need to go back to 2 because it will shake up the meta. It will bring back a lot of players that are like, oh my god, the Dragon Rulers are back. That's awesome. And it'll give the game a little bit of revitalization that it really needs, opposed to the way that the game currently is. The game is currently in a really interesting position right now, but I feel like by putting the Dragon Rulers all back to 2, it's going to shake up a lot of news in the game, and I feel like it's also going to give us a contender with the new Light and Dark Dragon support and a lot of the new Dragon support that we're getting, because it's going to help out those decks. Plus, I really want to play them all at 2 in the Armed Dragon deck. For the next card, we have Shifter. Guys, I know this is going to be really like, it doesn't even matter where I put this card. There's going to be people in the comments that are going to say this card needs to be banned. There's going to be people that say this card needs to be limited. There's going to be people that are going to say this card needs to be like completely no change, semi-limited, unlimited, all over the place. Okay. Everybody has a different opinion on Shifter. That's okay. I think Shifter should stay at 3. That's my opinion about it, because Shifter is a card that I feel like shuts down a lot of decks. It's a surprise factor. You have to hit it with cards, and the way that I feel like you hit it is with cards like Crossset Designator, and you hit it with a bunch of other cards, but it also puts a lot of decks like Snake Eye in check, because I have literally dropped this card against the Snake Eye deck, and they could not play. I feel like if you hit Shifter now, it's not a good move, because there's so many decks that are graveyard reliant, and this card just stops them in their tracks, and so this card is a very good balanced card in the meta. Again, a lot of people are going to have different opinions on this card, but I feel like this card needs to stay at 3 currently. You cannot, this card is like Max C to me. It's one of those cards you cannot put it 2, because then it becomes a Saki 2 of. If you put it at 1, it's just really bad, because if you draw that 1 Shifter, everybody's going to get mad. So it's not cool. So it either has to be banned or it has to be at 3. I feel like for now, this card needs to stay at 3. For the next one is Link Karibo. If we do make all of these hits to Snake Eye, okay? If we do, this is only if we do. If we hit 1/1, we hit Snake Eye Ash to 1, and we also hit Bonfire to 1, this card could go back to 3. I feel like Linkuriboh is a card that was kind of a miss-hit to me. I understand that it makes it so that some of the Snake Eye cards can dodge Impermanent Ash, but again, this is the same argument to me as Albion. You're not hitting the problem cards, you're hitting the cards around it. So I feel like by hitting Linkuriboh, that you just completely ignored the fact that Snake Eye Ash is the problem, and that cards like Bonfire getting to Snake Eye Ash and wanted getting to Snake Eye Ash through Diabellstar is just not cool. So I feel like putting Linkuriboh back to 3 is the correct way. And you guys know, if you guys are like veterans of the channel, you guys know where I want this card. Okay, you know where I want Called by the Grave. Okay, everybody that knows me knows where I want this card. So I want Called by the Grave at 3. Let's be real. I feel like Called by the Grave should be at 3. But being realistic, it increases the power ceiling of every single deck by putting this card at 3. So I get it. You can't have this card at 3. I feel like for now, it's probably a no change since we have like Crossout Designator at 3. But in all honesty, probably at 2. I feel like this card could come back to 2 and it would just be fair, because I really, really do not like it when a card's at 1 and it's a staple, because it just means that I feel extremely lucky when I draw it, and it feels really bad for my opponent when they see it and they're like, ah, of course they have the Called by the Grave. And so I feel like this card back at 2 would create like more friendly game states. I know that's really bad, but I feel like it would create more friendly game states. So putting this card back at 2, feel like it's probably the best way. So that's it for my ban list prediction, guys. Definitely comment down below what you think of this ban list prediction. I know you guys are going to be all over the comments agreeing and disagreeing, and that's okay. Just comment down below what you think is going to happen on the next ban list, and tell me what you think of this particular ban list. A card that I did kind of think about including on this was Zelantis, but I feel like that's a card that I feel like you don't really need to even bother with right now, because it's not a problem at the moment. If you do all these hits to Snake Eye. Another card is IP. Again, I didn't include that card because I don't feel like it's the problem right now. I feel like Snake Eye is the problem. And if you hit Snake Eye, then IP and Appaloosa kind of just aren't that big of a deal anymore. So that's it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Definitely tell me what you think of your opinion on this particular ban list prediction. Again, this might be more of a wish list. It might be a ban list prediction, depending on how you guys interpret it. I feel like this is the correct way to be able to do a ban list, to be able to fix the game in its current state, because I feel like the game is in a really interesting position right now. But I feel like the way that you fix it is by doing this, because by bringing back the Dragon Rulers, it helps the game a lot. By hitting cards like Albion and the True King of all Calamities, or not True King of all Calamities, the Red Dragon Archfiend, it really makes it a little bit better to make it so that players don't just get their turn skipped. So that's gonna be this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down below for all those awesome rewards. And we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.